Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming along to this afternoon's CDI webinar. So this is part of our Meet the Author series when we showcase authors who've written books for the CDI Trotman collaboration. And today I'm very pleased to introduce Jules, Benton and Chris Targett, the co-authors of the Career Development Professional Survival Guide. So today is an opportunity to hear more about the book, find out what motivated them to write it, what issues and problems they hope to address by doing so. The session will be interactive in the sense that you're welcome to enter your comments and questions. I know Jules and Chris will be very happy to answer those. And there will be some time at the end for more discussion if you wish. So without further ado, I will hand over and enjoy the webinar.
Is everybody hot enough, by the way? If not, feel free to go and grab a blanket. Our plan is we're going to just talk a little bit, but more than happy for you to unmute, put your camera on. We're not a huge group, so just ask us anything you want to ask. Hello, Eleanor. Nice to see you. Anybody else who'd like us to see them, we'd be more than happy to. Otherwise, it just feels like the normal me and Chris chatting to each other. So feel free to include yourselves. Shall we? Hi, Alina. Shall we start, Chris, with why we wrote it?
Yeah, I think that would be a really good place to start, Jules. And I think in terms of today's session, I think the bit to sort of put out there, it's a safe place to talk about ideas. It's a judgment-free place. There's no such thing as daft questions. Actually, as Jules and I would often say, is actually the daft questions are probably the most important questions. So it's a real genuinely safe place to talk about any ideas, questions, queries that you might have. We're here to talk about the book, but also Jules and I like to be in service to our fellow professionals. So you guys, so if you want to talk a bit about practice and the things that you're having with, in your practice that you might need help with, we're happy to have a little bit of a chat as well. So hopefully it's going to be a fun hour or so where we sort of talk about why we did the book, and it's a nice safe place basically. And of course, with the usual caveat, unless it affects health and safety, then we'll have to make sure that people are supported. So the usual caveat for us as career professionals. In terms of why we wrote the book, so many of you will have seen the book. It's our second book that Jules and I have written in collaboration together. It really partly came out of the first book that we wrote. So we found that when we were writing our first book, which was the Inclusive Practice Guide, which was focused on how we support our clients with disabilities and additional needs, we found all this other stuff was coming out alongside. And we were like, well, this stuff's important. And then alongside that, our lived experience as practitioners, and so myself, I'm the regional manager for the Young People's Career Service at CXK, a charity in the Southeast. I was going out meeting other career professionals, career leaders, other careers advisors, and some were struggling, massively struggling, particularly those very new to the profession. And Jules and I talked about it, and Jules sort of termed the water cooler kind of moments were being missed. So when Jules and I were first training, you would go back to your office and you'd meet other professionals and you'd have water cooler moments, and you'd be able to talk about practice and talk about what went well or what was not going so well and how you can do things differently. And we really felt that that was missing. And it wasn't just in terms of practice, in terms of how we work with clients, but that wider sort of structural thing, like how do you keep the school on side? You know, make friends with the caretaker, don't get locked in, keep the receptionist on side, make sure you buy biscuits and cakes for the right people. All those weird little nuggets of things that make career delivery fly. It's that pragmatic stuff. And so yeah, so it was actually Jules after the conference launch of the first book, where he turned around and said, "Fancy writing another one?" So Jules, is there more
Which
that
I
you
might add, he said no. But then half an hour later, through a conversation, he was like, "Oh yeah, I think we can do that if we do it together."
Yeah.
And I think part of that is Chris and I have spent years and years being told by other people that we should write books. and neither of us actually did it. So what we found is that having somebody else who you can bounce your ideas off, who you can just have as a sounding board, was so helpful. And, you know, we both have different skill sets as well. So doing something collaborative, I think, has made it much better than if either one of us had done it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I love to write lots, and I write loads and loads of stuff, but
Yeah,
I can't edit. I really struggle to edit and to rein myself in. Whereas Jules is really good at succinct, just kind of like hitting those key points. So together, we got a book that, for want of a better word, is hopefully balanced, you know. Um, and it very much is a partnership in the book. And we really wanted, like with both our books that we've done, that we didn't want either one of our voices to be dominant. So hopefully that comes across. And we really wanted the survival guides. So Jules had the brilliant idea of doing it as an A to Z. And it was just, you know, which has just really made it in terms of something that's quite unique as a guide, because you can then just dip into the bit you're struggling with. So you can read the whole lot. The whole book is apparently very good, but you can dip into the bit that you need at that time. So you can go back and hopefully reflect on those bits. And that really made it a really fun book to write as well, and a book that sits in contrast with the first book, which was a bit of a, for want of a better word, slightly weightier in terms of what we were looking at, you know.
and we're also really aware how pushed people are for time now. And I know myself that, you know, I buy a book with every intention of reading it, and I just find I'm short on time or energy or whatever. So we've tried to structure it so that people can just dip in and read a little chunk, you know, and then if people want to come back to us and talk more about a particular point or whatever, we're more than happy to. We didn't want to overwhelm people. Although both of us are very big on underpinning theory, neither of us are overly keen on the kind of academic speak. So we've written it how we are, how we converse, how we discuss things with people. So for any of you who prefer a more academic tone, it might not seem hefty enough, maybe. But we have had feedback from lots of people that they really haven't been able to read previous careers texts, but they can read these books. So we're kind of hoping that we can include groups of people who, for whatever reason, were not getting round to doing that kind of reading and reflection as part of their practice. And people are on their own so much nowadays. Even if you work for a company, lots of people are just on their own most of the time. I mean, I deliver training to like company-wide training sometimes, and people are still verbalizing that they feel on their own. And Chris and I have been so lucky, I think, in our careers, in that we've had numbers of other career development professionals in our lives who have mentored us, listened to us when we've struggled, given us an alternative perspective. We've just been really fortunate, and we're really aware that lots of other people don't get that. And some people that I've delivered training to have just lost the joy in their jobs because of that kind of rigidity in having to do like numerous appointments a day and then do your action plans and all that kind of stuff, or having a dual role, you're a careers leader and you're a careers advisor, and you just don't know whether you're coming or going. You've got too much to do, and there is nobody else in the organisation that you work for who does that, who gets it. So
I think we also sort of find, I think so Jules and I have talked about sometimes the dominant narrative on some of the social media platforms is like, wow, this person's doing this amazing work and this person's doing this amazing work. And there's all of that kind of the danger of all that gloss is that we, as individual practitioners, we look around going, well, everyone else is doing this amazing stuff. I'm struggling, or I don't always hit it out the park and it doesn't always work. And we wanted to share with you kind of the reality that actually that's okay. You know what? Most of us, we have wobbly sessions. We have sessions that don't quite land. We reflect on them and we kind of reflect in action and we reflect on action and we go, that didn't quite go right. You know, and both Jules and I are quite passionate about sharing those very authentic experiences that, and in the book and online on social media. So I do post out sometimes on LinkedIn with the impact stories, quite deliberately to share, A, how do we do it? So hopefully other practitioners can learn in terms of use it just as ideas, not to deliver like us, but to use them as inspiration. But also when it goes wobbly, that you know, I've posted numerous times where you know what, a session I think was going to go a bit sideways, but I did this, and this is what saved it. And I think having those more authentic conversations that recognize when we're tired, when we're a bit stressed, you know, when we're a bit worn out, and actually, what do you do? You know, so we've got bits in the book that address that you know, look to making sure that we look after ourselves, that we find our community, find other people to talk to make sure we're looking after ourselves, and to try and sort of dispel the myth that you know that everyone's out there doing this 100% job, or you know, that's kind of absolutely brilliant all the time, because that's just not the case. So we wanted to put some of that reality, that authenticity, that support around people, to hopefully help. That was our big motivation with this, to drive that forward, really.
Yeah. So there we go. That's kind of why and how we wrote it. I said we do write it by, we both like brain dump a load of stuff and then meld it together. And then later on, neither of us can remember who wrote which bit, which is really encouraging actually, because it does reflect the fact that both of us experience similar things and both of us want the same messaging. But if you come and ask us a question about who wrote that and why, unless I've named it in the book, you'd be lucky if we can actually identify who wrote.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll write something completely separately and then find we've written more or less exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, having not talked to each other about it. And then sometimes we write like in real time collaboratively if we happen to both be doing something that enables that. Like at one point Chris was in hospital and I was awake in the middle of the night, so we took the time to write. So it's not we're not the kind of writers who sit down and do a 9 to 5 writing.
Oh no.
A, because we both have day jobs and families, and B, because that is not how our brains work.
Yes. And there is so much about recognizing brains when you're writing. It's like we look at brain development with clients and stuff. Yeah, and recognizing that it's okay. So you know, this year, because we are hoping going to write a third book, fingers crossed. And I said to Jules, I need a break. I just need a year out, because 3 books in 3 years is a lot. I'm not going to do any writing. And then ironically, my brain's starting to get twitchy, and I'm now getting to the summer. I'm like, oh, I need to write some more. And so you will see that there are a few more articles that are landing through the Careers Writers Association. I wrote one on green guidance the other week, which came out from talking to Tristram. And I'm getting that twitchy brain again. And it's the writing itself is really, really good fun. So if you're any aspiring writers there, I'd encourage you to give it a go. And I suppose on the other side, with my Careers Writers Association hat, if you want to talk about writing, do please drop me a line, or you can drop, if you want to try writing some bits for the CDI, which is a good breakthrough bit, drop the wonderful Ollie Jenkins a line, who's the editor for Career Matters, who introduced us. Any of us would be happy to have a chat with you to encourage that writing. Don't be scared of it. If you've got things that you would like to say. So I'm not an academic by background at all. I'm an old level 2 student that did good and been able to work my way up. But write, if you've got stuff that you'd like to write about, your voice really matters. Talking of which, if you've got any questions for us, please fire some questions at us and we'd be happy to have a chat. So I open the floor. Is there anything that anyone would like to know?
I'm just wondering if it would help people if you outline some of the water cooler or, issues that would be a water cooler conversation in the days when we had offices and things like that that prompted you to that might be helpful. It might then be I'd be interested to hear what the moments are in the attendees' lives, their
Hmm.
professional lives, when they think, oh, I just wish I had somebody with me right now just so I could bounce an
Hmm.
idea off or ask them about that.
Hmm. I think, yeah, really, really good one there. I think in terms of, I suppose, historic water cooler moments, for want of a better word. So with my training, I came through the LDSS level 4 many, many years ago, and then on to my level 6, learning on the job. And I can remember when I first started out that I would overthink absolutely everything. um, from are the action plans that I was writing any good to how do we get into these different kind of careers and stuff. And I think some of the stuff that I found the most helpful. So I used to work down in the Dover area. And I had a fantastic mentor there, a chap called Malcolm Scott, who I'm still friends with. He's retired. And if you've seen my YouTube channel, my personal one, not the CXK one, there's a video of me interviewing him about his experience of careers and careers, if you wanted to have a look at sort of the historic side of stuff. But he was just incredibly good at not telling me what to do. I think that was the bit that really sticks with me, that I would come in and I would ask, well, how do you become this? Or how do you become that career? Or how do you get into that job? I don't know about this, or I'm confused on that. And he would never actually tell me any answers. He would never give me any straight answers, but he would encourage me of like, well, much like we do as guidance professionals, where can I look? Where can I find things out? Have I considered using this resource? Why, and getting me to actually learn through the actual practical side of doing stuff. So that's one side of kind of like I think from the water cooler moments for me was encouraging curiosity and encouraging me to be okay with not knowing. So I remember one moment that really stuck in my head. And I can remember just probably about 4 years into being a career practitioner. I was a level 4 at that point, wasn't a level 6. And I'd seen a kid in school, and I'd done the research and we looked at up these sort of occupational stuff, and I sent them some information. Got back to the office and I was talking to Malcolm and some of the other advisors, and I realised that I'd sent some of the wrong information, and I hadn't sent all the picture of all the options they can do. And I just went into a panic and I went into an absolute free fall of, oh my goodness, I've ruined this student's life. I've sent them the wrong information. What's going to happen? And the water cooler moment was just setting us down and kind of going, right, look at Malcolm saying, we're not brain surgeons. Has anyone died? Nope. Are you okay? Yep. Is the client actually okay? Yes. Right. So no one's at risk. Everyone's fine. Yeah. And then it was, well, what could we do about it? And the pragmatic answer was to find that information that was correct, send it on to the school and send it on to the young person, and just explain that I've, misinterpreted some of the information that he'd given us, and this would actually be more useful, explain the options, and if they wanted a follow-up session, he could have a follow-up session for the young person. And that was it. So this learning not to panic, learning that no one's died, everyone's fine, and that if you make a mistake, which we all inevitably do at some point, it's not the end of the world. And there's pragmatic things that you can do. So that was my water cooler moment, or one that really sticks in my head. Jules, have you got any that stick in yours?
Yeah. I remember, this was years and years ago, I had seen somebody use drawing as part of their guidance, and it was just so powerful. And I was talking to somebody who was mentoring me at the time, and I told them about it because I was like, this was awesome, da, 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 da. And I was like, but I can't draw. And she just said to me, well, does that matter? And I was like, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, if it's going to work better for the client, as long as you explain what you're doing, does it matter? And I was like, oh, I don't know. The person I saw doing it clearly could illustrate and draw and were very, very good. So I kind of said, I don't know if it matters, but I don't know if I'm confident enough to try and do it when I think I'm rubbish at it. And she signposted me to a kind of like a halfway resource. So it had some templates that you could add to. So some basic templates about career planning, about emotions, whatever, but you could add to them. And I started using them with young people. And it turns out, she was absolutely right, it did not matter what the quality of my drawing was. And quite often theirs was very good and they really, really liked it. So I just started incorporating way more visual stuff in my practice after that, which was such a huge bonus to me and to the clients. And it doesn't matter that I'm not great at it, but to the point where I kind of thought, I don't know if anybody really notices that you're not good at it. And I made a joke when we were writing this last book. So we were having a meeting, me, Chris and Alex, who is our adorable publisher. And we were talking about people stepping outside their comfort zone. And I told them this, and I just, throwaway comment, I just said, oh, so maybe I should do some illustrations for the book. And they both went, yes. And I was like, oh, God, now what have I done? But done now. So actually, technically, I can now tell people that I'm a published illustrator. And this is like, I still can't draw particularly well, and you will be able to spot which are my illustrations in the book. They are so not at the level of Chris's. But actually, it was really, I mean, yes, it was challenging for me to do it, but I really enjoyed it and I'm really proud of the results. And I have used it with young people to show them when they think they can't do stuff. I use it as like a living example of, you know, who knows what opportunity you're going to get. It's a bit of like a planned happenstance career progression. I'm not planning to be a book illustrator. Do you know what I mean? That's not my bag. But I do way more drawing now. So it's just that thing about allowing yourself to do stuff and not being too down on yourself, having a go and seeing what happens and what the feedback is.
Yeah.
But I would not have done that if she hadn't have asked me that question. Like, does it matter?
And I think that's where having peers really help. And that's what we mean by that water cooler moment where we can you can talk to others and kind of get their perspective on things. And it's included for me, it's things like models and theories. So I really struggle to get my head around models and theories, and I'm a massive geek. I love looking into stuff, but I struggle with trying to understand stuff. But talking to others about how they use models and theories in practice made me realize that these aren't things to be afraid of. They're kind of another tool in the toolbox. So it was my assessor, lady called Jenica, who I can remember working really closely with, and she encouraged us to bring models and theories into practice and to be able to share them with clients. And that's actually become a bit of a backbone of some of the stuff that I do now. I do an assembly where we've got bits of happenstance in there. We've got a bit of Donald Super's vocational psychology and stuff in there. Not necessarily referring to the theories, but the underpinning narratives come from those, come from those theories. And it's that ability to talk things through really, really help. Jules, I think we've got a question in the chat.
Dominique's asking about quizzes.
Right.
Diagnostic assessment tools and how we use them.
Oh, that's a good question.
You can then chip in. So in terms of kind of the more formal diagnostic assessment tools, I personally don't use them. I am trained to use them, but I don't use them in my line of work. It's very rare now that I use them.
I like Dominic's question.
Um, I use quizzes quite a lot, and I share quiz links with virtually everybody I see, whether I see them in a group situation or individually. I tend to outsource doing the quizzes to, if they're young people, to young people with support staff or young people with parents and carers, so they do it together. And I explain to them why I'm suggesting they do it. And it is usually either because they have a good idea, but they're not aware whether there might be other ideas. So it is just to generate something to compare and contrast, maybe something if they want a backup plan, other ideas that they're unaware of, or if they have absolutely no idea, it can provide just a place to start, really. I have mixed mixed results when they do them in class with teaching staff. And I think predominantly because the teaching staff haven't listened when I've given the explanation. I do try and do it on repeat, because I am very, very clear with people. This is not going to tell you what you should do. It's going to give you some ideas about things you could do. But in terms of what I actually do in my sessions, I would be more inclined to use things like card sorts, other types of games so we'll do games where we come up with ideas and maybe scale them, or put them on post-its and give each other job ideas and pick them up and chuck them at each other if we don't like them. And so within sessions, Dominique, I don't tend to use any of those. I use the quizzes a lot outside of sessions as a way of people taking forward their career thinking skills and to learn how to create ideas or to contrast their ideas to something else, particularly if they're a very fixed thinker. But within sessions, I'm really not doing any of that. Don't know about you, Chris.
Yeah, so okay, I'm going to take a similar but different angle. This is just like us normally geeking out together. So what we've got, so I kind of concur pretty much with more or less everything that Jules said there, of course, but I'm going to take a slight step back. I think we need to ask ourselves why we're using the quizzes and for what purpose. So for me, I know it's an oldie but a goldie, but the dots model. When we rearrange those letters to sod it, it makes a lot of sense. That's self-awareness. We have the opportunity awareness there. We have the decision making and the transition planning that, Bill Law, Tony Watson, all that fantastic, underpinning for what we do. And I think for me, what I found with the quizzes is, what are you trying to achieve with this quiz? So, and the quiz I think when you first start out, the danger is you have some limited resources and you go to what you know and it feels safe and it starts to feel like a really safe thing to do. But then practice can get quite, not stale, but kind of stuck because you're in your comfort zone. And I think there's that element of, with using the quizzes, you get a youngster, so for example, who might be fixated on, oh, I don't know, you have a youngster who comes in, definitely they want to be a bricklayer, just give you one, from example. And they don't want to do anything else, they don't want to look at anything else. And that could be fine, that could be their thing, that could be their pathway. But then sometimes I'll ask them, how useful would it be to consider what else is out there in this related area so you don't miss any opportunities? And I think at that point, it's really important to check in with the client to work out how they want to do it. Because the danger is that we go to what's comfortable for us. Yeah. So if a quiz is comfortable for us, we chuck a quiz at them. If a book is comfortable for us, we chuck a book at them. If a drawing is comfortable for that, we chuck that at them. But I think the most important thing to ask is how do they like to learn? So give you an example. For a few years I was doing just working at FE College as part of the outreach work we were doing, working with vocational young people. So I would see 30 bricklayers, I would see 30 mechanics, 30 electricians. And I can remember a colleague going, "Oh, are you just having the same conversation with everyone?" I said, "No, no, 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 absolutely not. Every conversation is unique." So, for example, go back to our bricklaying young person example. Um, I've had young people who they can't stand technology. So you give them something like the Be Constructive quiz, which is on the old Go Construct, sorry, it's Go Construct website now. It used to be Constructive. I'm showing the age. Go on the Go Construct website, and you've got the career quiz there for jobs in the construction industry. You throw that at them, and it will be completely meaningless. Throw it to another young person, and they'll love it. Depends on how they like to learn. So for some youngsters, I'll be like, I'll ask them, how do you like to learn best? Would you like an online resource? Would you like a book? Would you like a game? Things like that. So give you an example. So one student, we throw the quiz at them, and the quiz does what they need, and it helps them to discover what else is out there. Next young person, similar interests. I take them for a walk around the school with all risk assessed beforehand. And we'll walk around the school and we'll go, how is this school built? What's the first job you need? And they'll go, I need diggers. No, before that. We think about the back office roles. We're looking at architecture, civil engineering, quantity surveying, building our way up and building the knowledge up. And we'll bang walls and we'll go, what's that wall made of? What's on the floor? What's on the ceiling? What's that over there? Yeah? Who does that? And it's doing the same as the quiz, but it's doing it in a way that's dynamic, that works for how their brains work. For other young people, we'll do drawings and we'll tear up pieces of paper or we'll get flashcards. So, give you a case in point, I had a young person yesterday, literally yesterday, that I was working with, and wasn't sure what he wanted to do. That's fine, absolutely fine. We talked about how it's normal to not know what you want to do, and again, the whole brain development thing. But we got the Panjango cards out. He didn't want to do an online quiz. Online quiz wasn't going to work for him. And we got the Panjango cards out. Handy little resource to have that I use. And we did a card source. So first of all, we had a smiley face, we had a question mark, and we had an unhappy face. And I said, right, all these cards we've got here, they don't represent all the jobs in the world. That would be a massive card deck. But they're indicators, and we can use them to try and see if we can discover patterns. So this is the crucial thing. Sometimes going back to what Jules was saying, like with the quizzes, it's not necessarily about knowing that it's that exact job, but maybe it's a pattern, maybe it's something related to the job. So basically, they sifted through, made 3 piles, and this particular young person had some other stuff going on, and he really wanted it. He said at the start he wanted it to be a positive session. He didn't want to look at anything that was negative. So we had the unhappy face pile of cards, and I said, took that off, and I said, I listen to you. I don't care why you don't like these jobs. We're not going to talk about why you don't like something, and got rid of it. And his face just lit up because he didn't have to have that conversation. We then had question mark and the smiley faces, and because of how his brain works, we've got additional needs. I said, would it be okay with you if we sorted these 2 packs, these 2 different piles together? Because I've had some young people who want everything to be very neat and tidy. He was quite happy with a bit of organized chaos. And he said, oh, yeah, that's quite good, because I wasn't sure with some of them. So we shuffled the cards. I laid them all out, and I said, now I'd like you to sort them by patterns, but patterns that work for you. Not what I'm interested in, but what do you see sense in with these cards? And we made a bit of a joke that we're not looking for sorting them by color, but patterns of skills or interests or whatever it might be. And he came up with 4 things quite independently. He came up with a set of jobs that he thought were academic, a set of jobs that he thought were practical, a set of jobs that he thought was creative, and a set of jobs which he called his push zone, which he came up with that, not me, came from him. And he said that if he really pushed himself, he might want to do it. Yeah. And we then scaled them. And he had, I can't remember which way they scaled out, but he then came up with this set of jobs. And he was then, his next bit was, we talked about what they had in common and bits and pieces, but his next bit was to then go and do a bit more research on those areas. which potentially could have used the quizzes, but we were looking at other resources of how he selected about 3 jobs that he was going to find out a bit more about to help him grow his understanding. And he said, can I see you again next year, please, sir? I was like, of course you can. And he went out with a massive beam on his face, really happy, having had a positive conversation coming from a place that was lost. So card sorts, quizzes can be fantastic for discovery. Now, the bit where I have problems with the quizzes is when they're done as a blanket solution, as a kind of, you're going to do this quiz and this will tell you what you're going to do for the rest of your life. We hate it. The clients hate it. The teachers don't like it. So why do we do that? Unless we're caveating it as a part of a wider session about discovery. So I've done sessions with Year 9s where we get a selection of different quizzes. And if you have a look on our CXK resources, have a look at our CXK Careers Hub. I think we've got the links in the book. If not, drop me a line on LinkedIn, I'll send it to you. It's a free hub in there, and we've got a whole section on quizzes. And what we've done, or I've done in the past with some students, is we've been doing sessions in schools, and we give them all the quizzes, and we say, go and play. Go and see what you can discover about yourself. But this isn't going to be a one-stop solution. This is a starting point for discovery and curiosity. And then we talk about sometimes the most important thing is to, when you do a quiz or matching quiz and it comes up with stuff that you've put in but you don't like, ask yourself why. Why did that come up? What happened there? And it's those wraparound curiosity questions that we develop as career development practitioners that's really important. So I think in answer to your question, Dominic, which is it's a short answer made very long because that's just how my brain works. Long story short, short story long. Quizzes have their place, but they are another tool in the toolbox that should be used with care and an understanding of what you're trying to achieve, but also with a check-in with the clients that you're working with to see whether they're actually going to be appropriate for them or not. And that communication with them is really, really important. So that's where I am on the quizzes. So I hope that answers your questions with that. Jules, back to you.
I'm glad you feel reassured, Dominique. So,
Fabi.
yeah, and honestly, I've watched some staff and colleagues delivering careers lessons, if you like, around doing these quizzes and whatever, and they make them so boring. And I just kind of think, I do get very antsy if I'm sitting in on the session and I feel forced to ask questions because I just think this is so tedious and it's not what would excite me to find out more about particular careers and whatever. So I kind of think if we can make, and this is partly again why we wrote this second book, because Chris and I are like confident enough, if you like, to find joy in our own jobs. We're confident enough to do things differently and justify it. Confident enough to go and make something really good fun and then explain to people why this will work with some of their students and what the impact has been. And quite often the other staff in the session see it there and then, which is fab. But it is about having that kind of confidence to try stuff out and then to just flag to people where it's working and why, so that they get it. And I've had some really positive outcomes from that. I've had teaching staff sit in on sessions that I've done and kind of go, wow, I never thought that would bring out, I never thought they'd even talk to you, let alone it bring out all this stuff. I did a session with 2 students together because neither of them wanted to come on their own, and their learning support member of staff sat in on the session, and afterwards the 2 lads were both like, wow, that was so good, we need to find out more, and I just said to them, who do you think is going to help you to be able to do that? And they both named the learning support member of staff, who then said to me, oh, can I just borrow some of these so we can do a bit more? So I lent him a couple of my resources so that he could build on it. But he actually said to me afterwards, he said, I have never seen, I mean, the 2 young men were in a separate class because they absolutely hated school and they were being very disruptive to other students, and they clearly needed a different approach. And he said, I have never seen them so engaged with learning for their future. It was like a light bulb moment for the two of them, and they helped each other. They actually were saying to each other, whoa, if we do this while we're at school, we'll be able to go and do other things. Or, oh, I didn't get that's what we were learning this for. And it was so nice that the learning support member of staff totally got it then. And he was just like, whoa, we need to do more of this. And then he did show me what they've been doing for their careers lessons. I was like, no wonder they're disengaged.
And I think there's that element, I think, Jules, that you hit on really well there, that it's sometimes, I think there's, in the distant past, I think there's been a tendency to hide what we do. It happens behind closed doors. No one shall know our secrets, all that kind of stuff. And what I found as my career's developed, and it's part of, some of the stuff in the book there, is that the more we bring in other educationalists and explain why we're doing what we're doing. So things like the DOTS model, I can't believe how many schools I've shared it with and explain what, and so get a new careers leader going, I don't know how to structure a career provision. I said, oh, have you heard of DOTS? And then we talk it through, rearrange it, tell the old joke, to sod it. And they go, oh, that makes sense. So then, we talk about, well, if everything you're doing is attending to one of these 4 bits, you're going to be onto a bit of a winner here. And they go, yeah, that does make sense. So to what extent does each bit then address that? But then also things like, so we might do informed intuition assessments, which look like a coin flip or scrunching up a piece of paper and throwing it over your shoulder. And to an external other educationalist like a teacher, they might go, well, that looks all a bit random. But then you explain the theory underneath it. So, and some of this theory, we've got theory within the career development sector, and there's some fantastic books out there. So like some of the other CDI books like Julia Yates's and stuff like that, Tristram's books and bits and pieces. There's a whole bunch of really good theory books, but there's other theory that we can lean into. So, like Malcolm, older theory books, so things like Malcolm Gladwell and Blink, and where we look at decision making and how people make decisions, and that can start to underpin stuff. And if we explain to other people why we've done what we've done, so we've had it with things like we do. One of the things that we push on here, where I work so at CXK, is inclusive and creative careers guidance. So if it's appropriate for the session that it's a set of cards and some notes and we take a photo of it, if that's appropriate for the young person, those are the records of the session. And so if you have a look at some of the CDI stuff on action planning, I think Liz Reese did a few years ago, it starts to embrace those more other ways, client-centered ways of working. Now, if you don't explain to the school why you've done what you've done, the school might get very dissatisfied and more kind of like, well, what are you going on with? You call that work? It looks like you're just playing games. Yeah. But then if you explain the why of what you're doing and the underpinning theory of what you're doing, they're like, okay, that makes sense. Let's go with it. And I think there is that element of not being gatekeepers to the work that we do, to share what we do, and then we get more buy-in and then we get more support, and it becomes a far more supportive way of working. We help each other, but also within a school, if you're quite isolated, if you can bring other people into your conversations as to kind of why you're working the way you're doing or what you're hoping to achieve, and then seeing how it relates to their areas. So I can remember years ago, this is another water cooler one, Jules, where I was talking to some teachers in school. And they were like, well, what's the point with our subjects? I think it was a languages teacher and stuff. Well, they can only really go and do translating and interpreting. And they were quite rigid in their thinking. And then we kind of had a wider conversation about transferable skills. We looked at the graduate job market, critical thinking skills. And I challenged them to think about, well, why are we not bringing those other kind of conversations for your subject about the skills that you're getting? So if you look at something like Catherine Jennick's sort of skills cards and stuff like that, it's a really good starting point. And some of the posters by John Paley is always a good look as well. And once we changed it to a skills conversation, she said, oh, there's so much I can do. It's like, yes, languages is great for law. It's great for if you want to have a holiday. It's great if you want to do, all these other skills and stuff. And sort of came through teamwork development and communication skills. And she was like, I could be talking about that. And it was like, yes. But it only came about from not gatekeeping what we were doing, and that really helped. And so that sharing and not being an island can really help, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, Helen, I absolutely agree. Just ask the client. Clients, it is really rare that clients can't tell you how they best process information.
Oh, did you use post-its? Oh, Helen, yes. Blooming brilliant. I love a good old post-it. Yeah, and take a photo of it. Fantastic. Yeah, Helen, that actually sounds spot on. That's the kind of stuff I love to do. I also have like mini whiteboard cards as well, which are quite nice. So if you're concerned about the green impact of what you're doing, so I have little mini whiteboard cards, and then I use coloured pens, and that works quite well as well. Absolutely bloody brilliant. I'd love to have seen that session, Helen. That's really cool. Um, oh, have you got another question there?
Yes.
Hello. Hello there. Hello. How are you? You've just come to us. You've popped up, Eleanor.
Yeah, sorry. I pressed enter before I pressed finish my question. So I've just started my level 6 careers lead, literally last month.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It was just one of those. I thought let's just go with it. But I was just wondering, we work remotely across the region and across the UK. So you said about delivering those career sessions that are like exciting and engaging the learners. How have you got any tips to do it like remotely? So how we do it through a Teams call or any starting point?
Yeah.
I just go on to a Teams call and just drone at them because I know that I'll switch off myself.
So absolutely. Okay. So if I was more techie minded, this is where I'd be able to throw all these different tools that you can use that are kind of techie tools that you can do polls and quizzes and stuff like that. I'm not very techie minded. Okay. I think there's a big thing out there that it looks like that there's careers advisors getting to grips with all of this amazing tech. Some are. Some struggle. I struggle with all the tech, to be honest, just putting it out there.
If you want
I know,
to watch
I know.
someone, Eleanor, who
Yeah.
is who I apart from the content of what he covers is always good, but the way he uses tech to deliver is great. Watch some of Chris Webb's stuff.
Yes, I was going to say the same, Jules. Absolutely. Chris is really cool. Yes, yeah.
Chris uses some really useful, engaging tech solutions.
Yeah.
Some people you watch when they're using tech solutions, for me, it makes me want to switch off. However, when I watch Chris, I mean, I love seeing him present in person, but when I watch him doing stuff online and see how he uses tech, bloody lovely. Leanne is also really good at it, Leanne Hambley.
Yes.
But she has been doing slightly less of it recently. She's been poorly, so she hasn't put so much out there. But my go-to would be Chris Webb.
Mm.
If you want to let your brain run a bit wild and have a look at, for example, how you could enhance that kind of thing with AI, Danny Mertzer is absolutely worth a watch because although there are some of the things he does that I feel like I couldn't use within a company setting because I feel like there might be some copyright issues or whatever with some of the stuff he demos, but the way in which he utilizes AI to make careers engaging is phenomenal. So I think if you started with Chris Webb and Danny Mertzer, you will, and if you get them both on LinkedIn, that will then you'll be able to see who else they're linked in with, and that's where you'll kind of, well, if you're like me and Chris, you'll end up going down a rabbit hole and getting distracted and spending far too much time being interested in stuff that you really weren't intending to research, but that's a whole other story. But yeah, I would start with Chris Webb and Danny Mertzer.
I'd kind of go in a slightly different direction with this as well. That if you're less keen on the techie stuff and you wanted something more practical, I would think of your desktop as a box that you're playing in. Yeah. But think about what other tools that you've got that are straightforward. So we have things like sharing our screen, and then what I've often used is get the old-fashioned paint up and use that as my whiteboard to draw with. And I've got myself a better mouse that I feel better, more comfortable using. And you can get like pen mouses and stuff as well. And I've drawn stuff out. And um,
There is a inbuilt thing on Zoom, Chris. Just
is
saying.
it? Oh, okay.
Yeah. That
Thank you.
can
I
draw
didn't realize. Well,
on. I know. Just so people are aware.
yeah.
The other thing to caveat that with, I'm sure you can do it on Teams, but I really struggle with, personally, I struggle with Teams. So
Yeah.
I
I think the other thing you can do as well is that you can use props. So like here we are sitting like this, so I'm in my room, but I've done things like this in terms of kind of like, so I've got a personal phone, which is an old flip phone, because I get addicted to social media, so I have something that doesn't have social media on, and I've got my work phone. But we can use these as props. We can show clients things, and we can use it. We can do things like scaling. So, I kind of like picking up things impromptu. So I've got my work badge here, and then very quickly the strap becomes a scale. If are you more at this end with your idea, or are you more at this end? And then you've got something that's quite dynamic. Other things that you can do is talk about the environment that they're in, that you're working with your clients. So do they need to have fiddle stuff? Do they need time to move around? There was one client that I worked with doing some virtual work, so with one of our specialist schools. Now, the young person couldn't come to the screen. So all they could do, and I'm going to demonstrate, hopefully without breaking my laptop, all they could do was this. So this is them, me talking to them, and they could do this. They could do thumb up, they could do thumb down, and they could do that. So we had 3 points of conversation. That was it. That was all we had to play with because of their needs. But that was fine. But then once they realised it was fine, we built up with it bit by bit by bit by bit. And then about 4 sessions in, they came on the call and they spoke to us and showed us their face. Yeah. So I think it's been, although this stuff is virtual, living in our box, you can attend to how they feel about their environment, and you can attend to what can they cope with. It goes back, I think Helen was saying on the chat as well, that communicate with them, ask them what works for them. It always, and I think it's probably one of the big underpinning things of my practice. Don't assume, check in with them and explain why you're asking the questions you're doing, and asking what you're asking, and give space. I think there's the danger within something like an online thing that you have to fill space. But just like with client space in a room, you can have silence. You can just let it roll, and it's okay.
if any of you are like working with students with special educational needs, and they are like doing a preparing for adulthood type curriculum, the PFA resource toolkits on the NDTI website are editable online.
Cool.
So you can literally bring up the editable version of whichever template, good day, bad day, communication passport, all that kind of stuff. There's some really very simple but really effective resources on there, and you can just bring them up on screen and edit them together. And I find that incredibly useful, because it's not filling in a piece of paper that you send to somebody later or whatever. You can do it together, and then the person can just save that as their own record, and you have a record of it. So I would really recommend using those, particularly if you're doing stuff online. I use them in person as well, but online it gives people a focus which is not you like staring their eyeballs out, which can be really uncomfortable. It's always very difficult to know when you're online, I think, which bit do you look at and how do people receive that. But by having something that's more visual that you can co-produce, it really does give that space that people need within an intervention when you're online. So I'd have a go at those, Eleanor, and see how you.
I think with the online stuff as well, when you're co-producing, I know for me, doing more online stuff changed my face-to-face practice because, like with action planning, I do so many of my action plans with the client there, and we make time. We're really lucky with what we do because we generally do full sessions down here, and doing it with a client, whether it's on screen or in face to face, it changes that action plan. And like the ones I was doing yesterday, I was in this college, specialist college, and we did them together. And it was like, and it's not War and Peace you're writing. You're agreeing the actions, what they can do, their wording, but also things like the colours that they want to use. If you've got the freedom within your delivery, and it depends who you work for, whether you have that freedom. Oh goodness, client ownership of the records that we're producing and that co-production, it changes everything. And it changes that power dynamic completely. And it's like, well, this is yours. I was saying to this one girl I was working with, she'd been really anxious to come in, and we just did it on this piece of paper, and we did a highlighter, and so we looked at was there anything else that she needed on there? Did she want actions of what she's got to do there? And she's like, no, she said, I just want that. I just want to take that home. Okay, that's fine. But I'd already pre-agreed with the school that this is how we work in that school. So we'd managed those expectations. But it was her piece of paper, and she went away clutching it with her little map of the future on and happy. It's bloody great stuff, this that we get to do. It's so cool. I love this job. Yeah.
Right, Chris,
Yes, sorry, mate.
we have 4 minutes left.
Oh, sorry, we've been talking too much again. Sorry.
Always. Never too much. We always love talking to each other, but I'm aware there are other people in the room as well.
Yep.
Has anybody else got another question before we finish?
While people are gathering their thoughts, would you mind just explaining something about like if they picked up your book and opened it, sort of how you've designed it to be helpful, and also where they can pick up a copy?
There's all sorts of places you can pick up a copy. The place I would prefer people to pick up a copy from is directly from Trotman. And periodically you can get a discount if you're a CDI member. You can get it on Amazon, you can get it through Waterstones, blah, blah, but that obviously doesn't benefit us or the publishers as much. And they are a small publishers who are trying to extend their offer, and we really would like to support them in that. They have been absolutely fantastic at trying to extend their whole careers related range of stuff. So please, if you can, direct through Trotman. And it is just literally, you get an indexing at the beginning. Well, you get some nice pictures. You get a little index at the beginning, some of which will explain to you exactly what the chapter's about, and some of which you'll think, what on earth's that about? Then you'll have to go and read it. But they're short chapters. There we are, me and Chris by water cooler. That one, clearly his illustration, not mine.
So it's a kind of like dip in, and you don't have to. It's not necessarily a cover to cover read unless you want it to be. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's sort of. It sounds like it's
the only people I think who do read it cover to cover. And honestly, this is the bit of writing a book that does my head in, is when we have to read it cover to cover in order to finish the book off. And we do literally have to do, and it's like, oh my goodness. But no, it's not intended like that.
It's also got a nice foreword written by a certain Dr. Oliver Jenkin, whoever he might be.
Yeah.
I don't know who wrote that, but he says lots of very nice things about the book. So
all of which are true, and I think this is a really helpful book. And I just want to add, I'm not just sort of blowing smoke up you both, but I really do think that this is something that we need. I mean, the way career development services, mainly in England, not exclusively in England, but particularly in England, are structured, are a lot more fragmented. A lot more people out there are in private practice or very small organisations. And yes, we've got wonderful social media networks. Yes, most careers advisors know some others, but there's often that thing that we don't know where to turn about, or maybe to start with, we feel embarrassed about asking it. Of course, everybody's probably had the same concern or worry, whatever it might be. But it's just useful to have this. It's just like a kind of, I imagine it as a kind of mentor slash buddy you can take with me. And there isn't really another careers book like it. So yeah, highly, highly recommend it, folks. Very useful, very practical. Two of the wisest people in the careers world wrote it, so I cannot say higher than that. Um, it's 1 o'clock. It's very warm. People might have students to see. They might even want to go to the beach. Thank you both for your time. That was a wonderful webinar. So this has been recorded. It will be added to our YouTube channel and the CDI website. Please, please keep an eye on our training and events page. We've got lots of CPD coming up. There'll be future Meet the Author sessions just like this for future books in the series. My last words are to thank Chris and Jules for their time, and we hope to see you all next time.